Russia hasn't seen anything like this since the then President Vladimir Putin came to power in 2000. Thousands of protesters have taken to the streets of Moscow and other cities following the disputed parliamentary elections of December the 4th. And the rallies are expected to grow, with many arguing that the ruling party, United Russia, rigged the ballot. United Russia advocates have taken to the streets in solidarity with their party and its chief protagonist, Putin, who is running to become president again in March. The party officially gained 50% of the vote, a smaller share than in the last election and evidence of declining support for the party. But what do the results and the subsequent protests indicate? Do they show that Russian democracy is alive and well, or that the electorate has indeed been cheated? Are protesters airing grievances about the lack of political alternatives, or offering a more systematic rejection of corruption and cronyism in the ruling elite? Will the protests gather momentum or fizzle out? And if there were no United Russia or Putin, who would rule the world's biggest country? To probe these big questions, we're hosting a debate in our London studios. We're joined by Alex Nice from the Foreign Affairs think tank Chatham House and Viktor Balagadde, editor of the liberal business newspaper Kommersant UK. And over the phone from Moscow, we have Alyona Arshinova, chairman of United Russia's youth movement. Turning to you first, Alyona, how do you analyse the election results and the subsequent protests?
Yes, of course, United Russia has won in the parliamentary elections, and you know the result. It's approximately 50%. It's, to tell exactly, it's 49%. And now there are lots of meetings in Moscow and in different cities in Russia to support the victory of United Russia.
Turning to you in the studio, Alex, you've written recently that democracy in Russia is a charade, so you probably disagree with Alyona.
Well, she's right in the sense that formally United Russia did get the most number of votes. I think there are several things to say here. Firstly, there have been widespread accusations of falsification. The OSCE have noted many of those. I would also say that even prior to election day, the circumstances in which the elections were held were not such that you could describe them as free and fair in terms of access of all the political players firstly to the election procedure at all, and secondly to the media, and the use of administrative resources to influence voters. And clearly also, although United Russia polled 50%, in 2007 they received 64%. And it seems to me it's hard not to interpret this as something of a defeat for United Russia, given the expectations they had prior to the election.
Victor, is that how you see it?
Yes, in most of the things which Alex mentioned now, I do agree with him. And the way the political situation in Russia has developed in the last, I would say, a decade, it's really hard to expect a fair elections in Russia at the moment. And at the same time, I do agree with Alyona. There are official results of the elections, and but considering that next day, straight after the elections, there are so many cases of fraud and falsification, especially on video, has been posted on the internet, on many websites. So all these cases, I believe, have to be looked in, and then they should be, there is a certain procedure, a law procedure, and a certain body in the Russian government has to take a decision whether the elections were falsificated or whether they were fair.
Alyona, in Moscow, what do you think about those allegations of fraud and voting irregularities?
First of all, I want to tell to my colleagues in the studio that it's not a formal victory, or it's not only official result. As I want you to know that I am a candidate to State Duma, and I was running in Penza. So you want to ask me, you can ask me everything you want. I was there. I agitated for United Russia. I'm not a member of United Russia, but I joined to the People's Front was created by initiative of Vladimir Putin, and I want you to know that everything was clear and transparent in Russia. And you mentioned that previous elections, parliamentary elections, lead United Russia to 64% and now 50%. Yes, we unfortunately we got less percent, but it's normal. Every European party can only dream about the 50% result and its support of people. And it doesn't matter that now it's less, because United Russia is ready to accept every result, every will of its people. And I want you to know that it was fair elections.
Whichever way you look at it, the results and the allegations of electoral fraud have created huge controversy in Russia. We've seen some of the biggest protests on the streets of Moscow since Putin came to power 11 years ago. My next question is, why have the results of a parliamentary election, and these elections don't normally make headlines, why have they ignited such a firestorm? And I'll put that one first to Viktor.
The reason why there is such a reaction from the society, well, Russia has been going through quite, at the same time, very prosperous, but at the same time quite difficult years in terms of development of the civil society in the country. And the storm which you see on the streets of Moscow for the last 3 or 4 days can be explained that everybody knows that there is a fraud in the country. Everybody knows that these elections are not fair. The demonstrators in Moscow are quoting policemen when a demonstrator faces a policeman and asks him a question saying that you are violating my rights in arresting me or in detaining me. The policeman gives him an answer: I know that I am violating your right, but I have an order from the above. So everybody knows that there is a whole system, something what was called 10 years ago by Vladimir Putin, vertical of power, which was built by him, is quite corrupt, if you can say so. So people are very unhappy about it. People are very discontent, and knowing that the popularity of the party is diminishing, and still with all the fraud which has been, well, I cannot say that officially because I haven't been there, and I really appreciate that Alyona is very happy the way the elections were run. But many people are putting online all these videos where they were witnessed violation of the electoral process. So the fact that United Russia, which Alyona represents in this debate, is happy and ready to accept any result, I think means that United Russia should steer up and look at whether the elections were done in a correct format.
Moving this one over to you, Alex, because you did mention something before. You said that even by the official results of the election, United Russia Party down from 64% in the last one to 50% this time. That's a big reduction for Russia's ruling party. What message do you think this sends to those governing the country?
I think the message that the Russian people wanted to send, or a certain part of them, is that you have to stop treating us with contempt. And I think people are sick of that. And when they look at the political system, the setup which has been created with the tandem, Putin's return, and not simply that Putin's returning to the presidency or will ballot for it, but the way in which it was presented as a foregone conclusion, really seemed to me, and I think for many Russians, to be a kind of mockery of their rights and a perception that really the interests of the ruling elite are moving further and further away from the national interest. And so for me, this was indeed a protest. It was not a vote in favor of other parties. Most people, I think, are aware that the other parties that are in the Duma on many issues are very close to United Russia and can easily be co-opted. But it's sent nevertheless a strong signal that the Kremlin cannot and United Russia cannot rely on the endless patience of the Russian people, and they need to be responsive to the problems which are arising in society, despite, as Viktor said, the many years of growth and prosperity which did indeed occur in the early parts of Putin's presidency.